Hey everybody, I'm Todd and this is Sweet Tea Guitars. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel and welcome to another Tools and Tips video. Alright you guys, before we get rolling on this thing, I wanted to remind you all, I will be doing a giveaway every month from now through the end of the year. This month, March, it's a Nochetti Guitars fretboard radiusing jig that you connect to a trim router. It comes with two different radius carriages, a 12-inch and a 14-inch. I'm including a router bit in with it, as well as instructions on how to build the base that you need to build yourself to be able to use this thing. The only requirement, again, is that you're subscribed to the channel and that you comment on that particular month's video. I try to share every bit of information I learn with you guys already. And I started looking around here thinking about all these things I have in here that I really don't need. I want to share that with you guys as well. And I thought I could use that to help me grow my channel, to help some of you guys along in your own guitar building journey, and just make everybody happy, you know? That's what I try to do. One more thing I wanted to talk about before we move forward. I have purchased extra storage on my Google Drive account in the effort to share more information with you guys and to try to keep moving and keep everybody growing. I am going to form a folder system on that Drive account that I'm going to give you guys access to, and the first thing I'm going to post in that folder are the standards that we're about to talk about here for wood sizes that you need to get yourself into your first guitar build. And if you choose to use the standards that I use here at Sweet Tea, then you'll have that information right in front of you. I'm also going to post links to everywhere I buy stuff from. All my wood suppliers, all the people I buy hardware from, anything that I can think of that you guys could benefit from, I'm going to post that information in that folder. This video is going to be all about standards for wood sizes that you need to buy to build a guitar from. All these guitars we talk about, or all these sizes we talk about in this video, I am basing these on a 6-string guitar 25.5-inch scale, because you can pretty much count on you being able to build any of the 3 common scale lengths, with 25.5-inch being the longest of the 3. You've got a 24 3/4-inch scale, that's the Gibson scale as it's known. You've got a 25-inch scale, that's the Paul Reed Smith scale as it's known. And then you've got the Fender 25.5-inch scale. As far as bodies go, for a single cutaway Tele style, I use a standard body blank size of 16 inches long by 13 inches wide. The metric translation to that is 407 millimeters long by 330 millimeters wide. Now, on a Strat body, a Strat is probably one of the larger guitars that you'll build unless you move into a Flying V or an Explorer style. For a Strat body, I use a 20-inch long by 14-inch wide blank. The metric translation to that is 508 millimeters long by 355 millimeters wide. Now, there's a couple of different things to consider when we start talking about thickness. I like to start with an 1 7/8 or anything over the 45 millimeter range will get you a finished thickness of 44.5 millimeters. That's 1 3/4. If you are using a drop top, most drop tops come in anywhere between 4 and 8 millimeters. The ones I order normally come to me between 6 and 7 millimeters for the most part. So in that case, you can figure 1/4 of an inch or 6.35 millimeters for a top thickness finished, ready to glue on, ready to finish once it's been glued on. 1.5 inches would be your thickness at that point on your main body wood before you glue the top on, which equates to 38.1 millimeters. Then you glue your top on, you want a final thickness of 1 3/4 roughly. On any other guitar besides a tremolo guitar, that is unimportant when it comes right down to it. When it becomes an issue is when you go so thin that the end of the neck is not balanced out by the weight of the body. You get what is known as neck dive at that point. So let's recap. For a tele, you want a 16 by 13 inch body blank or 407 millimeters by 330 millimeters. On your thickness, you want an 1 3/4 finished body thickness regardless if you use a top or not. That ultimately equals about 44.5 millimeters. On a strat, that measurement changes. You need a longer body blank and a little bit wider. You would want to go to a 20 by 14 inch body, which equals 508 millimeters by 355 millimeters. So keep that in mind when you're looking for body wood. I almost always use a two-piece body. These days I've been multi-lamming bodies a lot because I have a ton of wood left around here, left over from neck builds. Some of those are thick enough neck blanks that I have enough wood to make a decorative stripe down the middle of a 44.5 millimeter thick body blank. So I do that because I don't want a bunch of waste sitting around my shop. One-piece bodies cost about 60% more in general than what you could build a two-piece body out of the same wood for. Just by putting the word guitar or luthier in front of the wood adds anywhere between 30 to 70% to the price. So it's nice to know some guys, especially when it comes to highly figured or highly exotic tops. It's nice to figure out who your wood guys are up front. I will list some of those in this list that I put on the dry folder. All right, you guys, let's talk about necks for a moment. I have come up with 2 different size standards that I use here in the shop. And the reason that is, sometimes I may want to use the flat fender swoop style headstock with no back angle on it. Sometimes I may want to incorporate my 7-degree signature back angle style on my necks, or I may want an expanded heel depth. On a fender style neck, I have come up with a standard thickness of 7/8 of an inch or 22 millimeters or thereabouts. On the length, a fender neck, a Stratocaster 22 fret neck is around 26 inches long. So I've come up with a standard of 27.5 to 28 inches or 610 to 625 millimeters, somewhere around in there. That gives you plenty of room on both ends to account for any headstock changes you may want to make. And I try to stick in the 28-inch range because if I can get 28-inch lumber, then I can incorporate a 24 fret neck into that without it becoming an issue. Width-wise, this is something I debated on for a long time because ultimately you can use a narrower neck blank for a tele style guitar than you can a Strat. Generally what I do is I order all my neck blank wood figuring on a width of 4.5 inches. That way I know I can incorporate any headstock style I may come up with 115 to 125 millimeters wide. That's where I like to order all my neck blank lumber at. Let's recap. For thickness on a fender style neck, you want a 7/8 or a 22 millimeter thick neck blank. For length on a fender style 22 fret neck or a 21, either way, you want a 27.5 to 28 inch long neck blank. And then on width, you can use anything 3.5 inches or above if you're planning on building a narrow style 3x3 or a tele style headstock. You can get away with the 3.5 inch or 90 millimeter wide neck blank. My headstock, the Sweet Tea Original headstock 6 in line, it takes about 4 1/8 of an inch to get that on a neck. So I like to have 4.5. That way I've got anything covered I may want to build. Let's talk about what happens when you move into the realm of an angled headstock or a set neck guitar in most cases. knowing I'm going to put a 7-degree break angle onto any set neck guitar I do generally. If you like a 7-degree break angle like I do, and one of the reasons I like that is because it allows me to use a neck blank that's 1 3/8 to 1.5 inches thick, which is nowhere near as thick as what you would need to be able to incorporate the standard Gibson Les Paul headstock break angle of 12 to 15 degrees. That keeps me right where I want to be on neck wood thickness. I don't lose that much below my profile like you would if you were cutting a 15-degree break angle in it. It also gives me the advantage of carving a volute into that neck. And if I'm going to do a break angled headstock, I'm going to carve a volute. That's just how I feel about it. I like that. It adds strength. It looks really cool. And that's how I build guitars. So my standard thickness on a set neck or a break angled headstock neck is 1.5 inches or anywhere between 38 and 39 millimeters. 38 millimeters, you can do a 7-degree break angle with a 14 millimeter thick headstock on it. Another advantage I have found to ordering wood that thick to build necks out of. That means if you find a killer deal on some, say, 1 3/4, 2-inch thick mahogany, you can order the same wood for a body blank and a neck blank out of the same piece of board. Length for a set neck guitar. I have come up with a standard of 30 inches. The reason I use that expanded length is because on most set neck guitars, I want to add a tenon. That increases the stability, tuning wise, the strength of the guitar as a whole. All that stuff gets increased by having that tenon. Now, in my opinion, there's a point that if you go past that, say like if you start moving out of the neck pickup cavity, to me, you're not gaining enough to make that extra wood worth it unless you're talking about building like a neck through. So I stick at the 30-inch. Metric wise, that's 813 millimeters. So to recap on a set neck guitar, I like anywhere between a 38 and 39 millimeter neck blank thickness, which ultimately falls in that 1.5 to 1.5 range. On the length, I like 30 inches or 810 millimeters. It can be up to 32. Anything beyond that, to me, you're wasting wood. Width wise, I like to use a 4.5-inch width or around 125 to 130 millimeters. Let's talk about fretboards. I like my fretboards on the thicker side. Some guys like them on the thinner side. For me, if I'm receiving a fretboard that has already been surfaced, 2 sides, it's ready to radius and slot when it comes to me, I want that fretboard to not be below 7 millimeters thick. You can get away with the 1/4-inch fretboard, you guys, but 1/4 inch, that is the standard thickness at the center of the crown on a Fender fretboard. So you don't want to start at what your finished thickness is what I'm getting at. Lengthwise on a fretboard, I personally like to use a minimum of 20 inches or 508 millimeters for the length. The reason being, you can do a decorative end on the fretboard if you choose to. You're not cramped for space. It gives you a little bit of room to move your nut back and forward if you wind up wanting to mess around with that, if you've got a figured fretboard or whatever. What that also does, on a fretboard that's 20 inches or slightly longer than 20 inches, you can fit 24 frets on that. I don't always build 24 fret guitars, but I like the option, especially if I'm buying fretboards blind, like not knowing what build they're going to go on. Sometimes I'll see a fretboard and I want it because it's beautiful wood. I like for that fretboard to come to me at least 20 inches long. That's my standard on that. So we'll say 20 inches or 508 millimeters. On the width, I like to see at least 2.5 inches, if not a little wider. Now let me tell you what the advantage of to having say a 21-inch long fretboard that comes to you at 3 inches. You can cut yourself 2 sticks of binding off the side of it, still have enough to get a fretboard radiused and put on to a standard size neck. I like it when my fretboard guys offer a little bit more width on some fretboards, and they often do. So I try to stay on the lookout for that. And I remember, oh, that fretboard's 3 inches wide. I'm going to cut myself a couple of sticks of binding off that before I slot it, because once you slot it, you're done. Anyway, 20 inches long, 508 millimeters, 7 to 8 millimeters thick, slightly over 1/4 to 5/16, 2.5 to 3 inch width, which is anywhere between 64 and 75 millimeters. That's what I like to see on a fretboard. It took me forever to come up with these standards, and now I use those standards when I'm ordering wood for anything. Now, I want to tell you guys something else that happens to me quite often. Bell Forest Products, I buy a bunch of wood from those guys. And they always have killer wood. You get to see the picture of the actual piece you're buying. And I buy a lot of neck and body wood from them. Well, I may see this piece of Bolivian rosewood on there that I've not seen in forever, or that I know I'm not going to have a chance to buy again maybe. Say it's 3/4 or 19.5 millimeters thick. It's not thick enough on its own to build a fender neck out of. Then what I start to do is I look at how wide it is. Knowing that I'm going to build a multi-laminate neck out of it anyway, I then look to see, well, can I get 2 strips for a multi-laminate back-angled headstock neck out of that if I slice it in half and orient the boards on the vertical? That means that you need a slightly over 3 inch wide board, or around 80 millimeters, somewhere like that. If it's anywhere between 78 and 85 millimeters wide, you can get 2 boards out of that, turn them up on their side. There's 1.5 inches covered in your neck blank thickness already. And then you can use decorative stripes, veneer, whatever you may want to use. So I don't limit myself when it comes to neck blanks, knowing that I'm going to use all the wood I buy for multi-laminates. I always take that into consideration when I'm figuring out something that's less than the thickness I want. Even if it's down to a 1/2 inch thick or whatever, you know you can rip that board in half, turn it on the vertical, put 2 decorative strips 1/2 inch wide down your neck blank, or your body blank for that matter, and you're golden. You know, I always try to think about that, you guys. How can I maximize the efficiency of the wood? How can I get the most out of that piece that I'm buying? Say like I order a 50-inch long piece of Red Heart that's 5 inches wide. I know I can get 2 pieces of vertical neck blank wood out of that. Still have a 20-inch long, 5 inches wide board. I can cut myself 2 vertical pieces for a body blank out of that same thing. So you need to really start to consider, how can I use what is going to be left out of this if I buy this for a neck blank? Sometimes there's no way around it. That kind of stuff I stack up in the corner, save it for binding or decorative neck heel pieces or headstock caps, whatever. Always be thinking how you can use that wood. That's my point. All right, you guys, so those are my standards for neck blanks, body blanks, fretboards. Like I said before, if you're into that kind of thing, don't forget to check that drive folder out. I'll post a link in the description below. I'm going to share that with you guys, and I will try to get that happening as quick as possible. Anything I think could be relevant or helpful to a budding guitar builder or a seasoned veteran even, I'm going to post that in that folder. So we all have a place, even myself, that I can go back, have that as a reference tool, and a place to find the information that I need to find quickly. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can stay up to date as I release all these tools and tips videos I got planned. I am so grateful to you guys for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this community, to lend all the knowledge that I can gain and give that back, and anything else I can come up with that I can do to help any of you guys get into guitar building or to further you along on your journey. I'm going to do it. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel, you guys. Thank you so much for all your support. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, peace and love.